Hey, welcome to Jason FinTips. I'm Jason, and I'm here to help you guys out today. Today, we're going to talk about a little bit of financial planning, and we're going to talk about real versus nominal incomes. But before we dive into that, first thing we need to get out of course is just do a quick disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. Um, and not this is not financial, investment, tax, legal, insurance, or political or medical advice. No personal recommendations are being made. Nothing presented should be interpreted as a solicitation, endorsement, or guaranteed results. Although I do hold a CFP designation and a CLU and a ChFC, I am not acting as a financial representative, financial advisor, tax professional, fiduciary, or legal representatives through this platform. All examples, case studies in this video do not create an advisor-client relationship, a fiduciary relationship, or a planner-client relationship. Always consult your own licensed professional for advice specific to your individual circumstances. And with that, I excuse me there. I want to get talking today about real versus nominal income. We've had inflation go up about the last few years, and a lot of people. The big thing I'm talking about is like, what is the difference between nominal and real income, and why does that matter? Um, the core difference to take away is that there is a difference between nominal income is the face value of your earnings, and that's what's printed on your paycheck. $100 today or $100 last year is not the same as $100 a year this year. Real income, on the other hand, actually takes a look at the actual purchasing power of your dollar after accounting for inflation. And inflation is a slow erosion of the purchasing power of your dollar. Hidden costs, inflation quickly erodes the value of money over time. So let's say it's a 3% inflation one year, then 3%, then 3%, then 3%. Over a while, all of a sudden, that $100 only buys as much as a $90 basket of goods. And this is one of the key things that I think a lot of people have misunderstood over the years is the slow effects of inflation on your paycheck. So if inflation goes at 3%, but you only get a 2% pay raise, you essentially have taken a 1% pay cut, essentially. And you start doing that over 5, 10 years, all of a sudden, your paycheck is 10, 15% less than what it used to be. And this is something that I think people should focus on. So when you're looking at possibly negotiating for your annual raise, is one thing that I'd say is the base starting point should be, what is the inflation adjusted real cost of the money? How much is a dollar and what was real inflation? That should be the base number that you start at. Um, Incomes versus cost of living. And we can also have home prices, rent, essential goods often rise faster than wages. So sometimes your real income, not only is it not keeping up with the purchasing power of the dollar, other things are actually growing are growing at a nominal rate faster. So all of a sudden you start seeing housing become more expensive, rent become more expensive, food and groceries become more expensive. And all of a sudden when it kind of hits a tipping point, people are like, oh my gosh, I just can't afford it. What's going on with this? That's probably the slow factors of inflation that's been affecting a lot of that slowly affected your bills. Plan smarter with real income and mindset. So one of the things that I want you to say when someone is thinking about their financial planning, they're planning for retirement, um, planning for your salary or your raise, is to start out with, I'm going to not look at the nominal value of the dollars. I want to look at the real income that I'm making and use a real income mindset to adjust my budgets, to look and negotiate for raises, to make my investments and my life decisions and purchasing decisions. Have you ever felt so? Essentially, it's basically you felt like hey, my paychecks went up, I'm making more money than I ever have in my life, but how come it doesn't go as far? I can't afford as much. Everything else seems to be more expensive. That is a specific example of nominal income not keeping up with your real income. So what we're going to break down is kind of take a look at the inflection, kind of some impact of inflation on your income. So let's say in 2022, you made $50,000 in income, but there was an inflation rate of 6%. So in 2023, your nominal income, you get, let's just say, a 6% increase is 6% inflation. So now to buy that same basket of goods, you would need $53,000. So but you're saying, oh, I haven't got a pay raise in a couple of years. I'm still earning the same 50,000. Well, that same 50,000 is only worth about 49,905 because you've now seen a decrease in the purchasing power of your real inflation adjusted income. So Takeaway, even with the raise, the value of your income after adjusted for inflation can actually be lower. So that's why we need to make sure to pay it to our real income, the inflation adjusted number, not the nominal income, which is just the value of a dollar, just the nominal value. So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to protect your buying power, and also gives you some budgeting and forecasting so that you take and you don't overestimate your financial position. Say, hey, look at all the money I'm going to have. Well, and I see this sometimes in retirement planning, people, I'm going to have plenty of money and look at this. Well, once we start adjusting for inflation and costs, you don't have as much money as you thought you did. In fact, it might be significantly below what you thought you did. This is one of the things. Inside Social Security, there's always what's known as a cost of living adjustment. And that cost of living adjustments, we see where people get an inflation adjustment annually. And a lot of individuals look up for that because if they don't have that cost of living adjustment, they're not going to be able to keep up with the same purchase of goods. And over 10, 15-year time period, that can significantly erode the purchasing power of your Social Security payment. So I want people to think about, I would highly suggest that someone think about whenever you're coming into a year and you're going, okay, am I going to get a raise this year? What's it going to look like? How does this raise compare to the inflation rates that are out there? Is this keeping up with the real income? And so that should be the first question. So is it a raise or is it a slow decrease in your real income? Um, So nominal income is crucial for immediate expenses, determining how much you can allocate to rent, groceries, transportation, and others. Planning vacation, purchasing powers, cars, or savings, or a wedding. However, relying on that nominal income can lead to, as we were talking earlier, can lead to a miscalculation of how much those goods and services might cost in a few years. So let's say, take an example here. Let's say that you made $50,000 in the year 2018. You still earn $50,000 today. Well, in this period, this was a 15% of your real income has effectively been decreased. So if your real income was this, I think this post was written this year, so about 2025. Your real income, your nominal income divided by 1 plus the inflation rate is the formula we'd use to figure this out. And you can use some ChatGPT or some any other tools to go figure this out. So your nominal income was 1,000, your inflation rate was about 15%, your real income was 50,000. Your income has actually dropped to about 43,500. This means the purchasing power has declined. Even though your paycheck hasn't changed, you still cannot afford to buy as much because inflation. How it affects your daily life. And over the last 5 years, we've seen a lot of them through COVID. We've seen inflation go up. We've seen expenses go up. Things get more expensive. A gallon of milk that cost $3 5 years ago might cost $4 now. Rent that was $1,200 a month might have increased to $1,500 to $1,600. Gas prices have actually fluctuated with inflation, and those affect daily commutes and travel. Inflation's broad effect on the economy. The money in low interest rate savings accounts can actually lose money faster. Borrowing, inflation drives central banks to increase interest rates, making loans more expensive, and we've seen that with home prices, where mortgage rates used to be around 3% and now they're up to 6%. Investments, well, inflation can, which makes it harder to cost more to buy a home. Or borrow the more to rent the money to buy a home when the cost of the interest. Investment, while inflation can erode purchasing power, certain investments like stocks and real estate can actually hedge against it. Um, just some more practical example. Let's say Sarah earns $75,000 annually and receives a two. So this is another one, is where you earn a salary, but you do get a pay raise. But inflation exceeds if the inflation rate is rising faster than the rate that you're getting a salary raise. So let's say that, in this example, we see Sarah, she's getting $75,000, this example, and her real income, the inflation rate is 3%, her purchasing power has declined about 2.5%. In 2022, she's still making 76,000. She's getting a little bit of a pay raise, but the inflation rate is run at 3%. She's now getting here to where her real income is down to 74 too, so she's taken about a 2% pay cut, another 2% pay cut. And in 2023, her nominal income has gone up to 73,000. Inflation's running about 3%, but her real income only get that 2% income. Her purchasing power goes down about a 1.7%. So she has seen a slow decrease in her actual purchasing power and her real income because of she's not going up as she's seeing an increase, but it's not as increasing as fast as inflation. So yes, her real income has gone up a little bit, but it's gone up less than the cost of the basket of goods. And so this right here, I think, is a situation for a lot of people. You go, hey, I got a little bit more, I get a pay cut, I got a 2% pay raise, but inflation is running at 3 to 4%, and that the cost of goods on your personal basket. So all of a sudden, yeah, you are getting a little bit more. For it seems like that over a couple of years than you were, but it's not as keeping up with where you were. And this is the one I really want to focus on. Is I think the inflation rate, if you're looking to negotiate your salary on your annual upkeep, you really need to be focusing at the actual inflation rate to keep your real income, and you should be focusing on the real income values rather than nominal incomes of your paychecks. Um, we can also see household budgets breakdown. Inflation hits your wallet. Post-inflation, let's say pre-inflation monthly cost was 1,500. Post-inflation, we can say, let's say there's been a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, increase and 10% total increase. Housing has gone up, groceries gone up, utilities are up 10%. So all of a sudden, each of these little things start adding up to your monthly cost, to where it's like, okay, we've gone up about 10%. Our post-inflation monthly cost is going up. With a flat income of 3,000 a month, the household might break even. Even just a 10% inflation spike can suddenly 300 over budget. So you're just like, hey, we had 3,000 budgeted. All of a sudden, we had $300 in expenses we weren't really counting on. I don't know really where it came from. Maybe you put that on a credit card. Maybe it's something you weren't budgeting for. So this is something that paying attention to the real costs and inflation really starts to matter. So once again, inflation slowly erodes your savings capacity. It will slowly trigger lifestyle adjustments. And the thing is it's very inflation is slow, and you don't really see it over a few years until you're like, wow, things aren't different. So it's kind of slow until you don't actually notice that it's really there. So that's one of the things why it's really important to stay on, not just pay attention to your nominal income, but to your real income during the time period. What can you do? Make sure to reevaluate your budget. Focus on high income categories like grocery, housing, transportation, and other where you can often feel the inflation impact first. Use a budgeting template that tracks your inflation adjusted for your own personal adjustments. Um, so the other thing is, I want to take a look at make sure to go check out the BLS inflation calculator, budgeting apps with inflation features, and some manual methods. I would sit there and say, the first place I would start with an annual increase is looking at the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, and find out what is actually the inflation for the fundamental government reported inflation figures. And if you want to stay at the same rate, that's the pay raise that you would need annually to keep up with your current previous real income, because you want to shift from focusing on nominal income to focus on your real income. So, for example, if your salary is $53,000 and inflation is 6%, your real income would need to adjust by 6% to approximately about 49,900. Would need to adjust to be able to get it to keep up with that. So you would need to take about a $3,000 raise at least, so that would take it up to about 56,000. So, or 1,500, so about 5,500 in order to adjust for that inflation, and that's where you would want to start your negotiations. So a raise might feel like progress, but it's really growth. If you say, oh, I got a raise and I'm making more money, but actually you're just kind of staying where you were because you're not falling behind. Inflation proof your finances. Um, Invest with inflation in mind. Stocks, bonds, equity. Use something that can take in long term. Not investment advice. That's something that you need to talk with a professional about. Real estate also tends to hold. There's also things called Treasury investment protected securities. No investment is risk free, and diversifying into inflation resistant assets can be something else. So inflation is something that's out there. It's a risk that you're going to have to deal with. Upskill and get higher earning powers. But once again, even if you do income and do a job that you get to earn more power, you're still going to want to be able to get that inflation adjusted real income that you want to focus on. Diversifying your income stream. Maybe you have some income streams that are more applicable, that can easier adjust to inflation. So I think the main thing though is really just understanding that there's nominal inflation, there's nominal income, and then there's real income. And everyone pays attention to, hey, I got a 3% raise this year, when really you need to say, what was, oh, I got a raise. Was it a nominal raise? Okay, it was a nominal 3%, but my real income, inflation was running at 4%, or inflation was running at 2%. What was my real income raise? Did I stay the same? Am I earning more money or am I earning less money? And this is something I think a lot of people need to pay attention to, because you won't feel it after the first few years, but all of a sudden, 4 or 5, 10 years down the line, all of a sudden you're going, I've been taking a 1% pay increase or a 2% pay decrease every year for 10 years. All of a sudden, I'm feeling like I'm making 20% less money. Why am I not getting ahead? But my nominal income is higher, but my real income is what you need to pay attention to. With that, thank you very much and pay attention to your real income.